Okay, well, hello there, guys. It has been a wild ride to get to this point. It's been almost a month since I uploaded my non-spoiler review. I have been working on a gigantic video uh, diving deep into this movie. However, iMovie decided not to save any of my progress that I made. Um, and I just kind of decided against spending another almost month working on another giant-sized video to give to you, and just decided to jump straight to the point, and get down to the nitty-gritty of this movie without making you wait anymore. So that's what I'm doing. So without further ado, I am Josh Bailey. This is Poseidon Media, and welcome to my first deep dive into a movie, and that movie is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am a huge Marvel fan. Huge. Read a lot of comics growing up, and even now I subscribe to Marvel Universe to read all the comics. I have a yearly subscription to that. I also have seen almost every Marvel movie there is. The only one that I haven't seen thus far is Eternals, and I've been told that that's okay. I know what happens in that movie. I've seen bits and pieces. You know how it is. So, that being said, I want to touch on one thing real quick right before we jump into the large chunks of this film. And that is the question that some people are asking right now, which is, why weren't the Avengers at T'Challa's funeral? Now, I understand that might come off weird to people, considering the fact that almost everybody attended Tony Stark's funeral. And Marvel seemingly was trying to put T'Challa on a pedestal that was nearly the same height as Tony Stark's. And yes, I would even say that his pedestal was the same height as Tony Stark's when he died. However, T'Challa in the movies, and especially in the comic books and the animated properties, has always been very secretive and reserved. Thus Wakanda having the closed borders that it has, and the refusal to work with other countries, which was a pretty big issue in this movie, that they touched on quite a bit. And I think it's because of that T'Challa may have, left the other Avengers out of the room as far as information that regarded his illness, him dying, him passing away. And when it eventually happened, I imagine that, the Avengers would have heard about it. And I also would imagine that T'Challa's wishes were probably honored in a way of them staying away and not necessarily going to their, to the funeral, to go to Wakanda. Because they even touch on it in this movie. For about a year, Wakanda completely shut down its borders. It closed off communication with the rest of the world. So I feel like that makes perfect sense as to why the Avengers weren't at his funeral. As far as Bucky goes, I don't know why he wasn't there. I feel like if anybody would have been invited, it would have been him, especially since they already kind of established the fact that Bucky in the MCU is the White Wolf. So as far as that goes, that's the only one, in my opinion, that might deserve a little explanation. But I'm sure that the Thunderbolts probably had him tied up in other stuff, or at least Val, who has appeared in various Marvel properties over the past year and is now the director of the CIA, apparently, according to this movie, which was very random to me. But it was nice to see that they gave her a important position, valuable at least, within the U.S. government. I think that was a nice choice on the part of Ryan Coogler and the writing team at Marvel for making that decision. Now, The actors' performances. Um, First of all, Letitia Wright, who I understand is very controversial and very polarizing. Some people like her, some people don't because of her political views. I'm not going to touch on any of those. I'm just going to grade her performance as it was, regardless of her personal opinions, regardless of her stances that she's made. Um, she gave an incredible performance in this movie. Letitia Wright, every time she was on screen, you knew exactly how she felt. You felt every ounce of sadness go over her body when her mother came into the room and told her that her brother was gone. That's the kind of performance that you would expect from somebody like her, and especially from a character in that circumstance. You want to be able to make the audience feel what she feels, and that's exactly what she did. I really, really, really enjoyed the progression through this path of vengeance that she had. I love the way that they had Namor, who they delivered as a sympathetic villain. On the part of Tenocuerta, he did a phenomenal job bringing this character to life. And there are some scenes that just made me feel, as a comic book fan, that is Namor. That is exactly who Namor is. Namor is not just some random guy who wants to destroy the surface world for no reason. No. Namor is a guy who cares so deeply about his people. And I realize I'm getting sidetracked. So I'll get back to the main point. We'll get to Namor later. I love the way that after they establish that they're sympathetic villain, in Namor, they have him guide Shuri through this arc of vengeance that she goes on, not only for her brother, but then eventually later on down the line in the movie, her mother. And they wrapped it up perfectly in a sense of family and love, overcoming and persevering through rage and vengeance and all of these, self-destructive emotions that she was feeling, because this is a girl who's lost everybody in her family. And she just did such an amazing job of portraying that and showing that on camera. And, obviously the writing was fantastic, and that certainly helped. But having an actress on hand, an actor like Letitia Wright, who is able to hammer home some of these, these details and emotional reactions, sometimes even just with the muscles in the face, and being able to show these feelings is a 50% of that story and of creating that story. So props to her for being able to deliver that, because it was outstanding. Now the next person, and I already touched on him, is Namor, played by Tenocuerta, and he did a amazing job in this role, and I cannot wait to see this guy show up in anything else. This man blew me away. And a lot of people, for some reason, some people had issues with Atlantis becoming an ancient Mayan or ancient Aztec origin story, and becoming that kind of a culture, and then rebranding it instead of Atlantis as Talocan. I didn't mind that at all. I am obsessed with that part of history. I love the fact that they tied in the Spanish conquistadors. I love the direction that sent this character in. I love the fact that they called him a mutant right off the bat. I love the fact that they put the wings on his freaking feet. This character has been set up for success in this movie alone in so many ways that you can't even imagine. And there's only up from here for Teno Huerta and the character of Namor, and it's because he did such a great job delivering as a sympathetic and emotional villain that is not on a path of vengeance, but rather a path of a man who is trying to protect his people and the ones that he loves. And there is no doubt in my mind that if Chadwick Boseman hadn't passed away tragically and was able to be in this movie, that it would have still been as emotionally powerful as this movie was. Obviously, yes, without the funeral and without T'Challa being such a big part in this film, at least emotionally, but it still would have knocked down the door emotionally and still would have made people cry just based on the story that Ryan Coogler wanted to tell, which he made very clear that while, yes, he completely rewrote this script, the only part that he really changed, which is huge, I'm not discrediting that, it's a huge rewrite, but basically just to make Shuri the Black Panther instead of T'Challa. And they had to go in a completely different direction, obviously, with Chadwick Boseman dying, and nobody could plan for that, and they did an excellent job. But Namor was always going to be the villain for this film. They were always going to have an emotional standoff at the end. This was never going to be about a big Marvel blockbuster finale of a fight scene that they made fun of in the She-Hulk show. This was never going to be a more traditional Marvel movie with the sticky note first, second, and third act scripts and things like that, to make it fit in with the rest of the broader MCU. It was never going to be one of those movies. And I think that once you understand that, and once you gain that knowledge of, okay, this is a movie that, while yes, has ties to the rest of the MCU, but it's also a standalone movie in its own right, like the first one was, that can exist by itself and doesn't need the tie-ins of having Avengers show up at T'Challa's funeral, or having references to Captain America, or the Guardians of the Galaxy, or other things that they would want to throw in there. It doesn't need any of that, because it is already such a powerful story that they're telling that rivals the first movie. And not a lot of these sequels in the MCU have been able to say that. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Winter Soldier? What about Iron Man 2, which is but we'll get there. What about, Guardians 2, which arguably was better than Guardians 1, in my opinion. That's how I feel about it. These are just my opinions. So remember, before you come at me, just remember, these are just my opinions. So, yes, it's possible. And I think that Marvel is changing the game as far as sequels go and what to expect and things of that nature. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The fact of the matter is this. Yes, this movie had some pretty big problems in terms of, continuity and storytelling. They had the moment where Shuri mentions to Rwanda that AI is not going to take over the world, and it's not like the movies or whatever. And she's saying this in a world in which Ultron in AI almost took over the world. So, yes, that's my point is, yes, it had some pretty glaring issues. But overall, from the standpoint of a movie that was trying to convey a message, which ultimately ended up being a love letter to Chadwick Boseman and everything that he stood for. It ended up being a movie about grief and emotion and how to attune with those feelings that you have when somebody that you love dies. That's what this movie was really about. It didn't really matter that it existed within the Marvel universe. It didn't really matter that, you know, the Black Panther had died. It didn't really matter, you know, what mattered most was Ryan Coogler sending a message to anybody who's ever lost somebody, telling them it's okay. And I think personally that he nailed that message and executed it to perfection. Um, so, you know, yeah, that is basically my thoughts. It's been 15 minutes already, 16, whatever. Um, so I'm probably going to call it here because, well, the algorithm. To be perfectly honest, I still have more to say, but that, in a general sense, was my honest review of Black Panther 2. I would rate this movie, as far as ratings go, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Um, and if you'd like to see me rank these Marvel movies from Phase 1 all the way up through, since we've just ended Phase 4, um, let me know, and I will do that. I could definitely go phase by phase. I could talk about Marvel movies forever, guys. Let's be honest. So, with that said, thank you guys for watching. Hit the comments. Let me know what you want to see me take a deep dive into next. And yeah, I've been Josh Bailey. This has been Poseidon Media. And hit that notification bell. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. And I will see you guys in the next one.